peeps, welcome to Reaper Pro Tips with me. And sorry for the delay. Once again, got caught up in Reaper discussion, Reaper Talk, TM. And totally sucked up the first bit of time. So here we are. And we're here to paint a little red dragon, or a little dragon red, one or the other. Yes, but I wouldn't call it perfection, Iffy. If it was perfection, we wouldn't have to sit and, jabble at each other, right? There'd be nothing to talk about. We'd just be perfect. And then the world would be so much less interesting, right? So, grabbing brushes. I actually have my base paint mixed up already. We're going dark with this. I like to go dark with my reds when I start them. And good morning. Yes, good morning. Good morning. Good morning, good morning. I haven't mixed this particular color before, and I'm experimenting, so I am just trying to get myself a nice dark brownish red to start with. Well, that looks close. There used to be a color in a different paint line that I would always start with for red that was ridiculously dark. Maybe I just need to try again. I like to start my reds dark for a reason. I don't like the very, very bright red that I get. 3, 4, 1 second while I count. 6. I don't like the very, very bright red that I get when I lay down a medium red first over a light gray or white base coat. I find that I don't enjoy that. I like to actually build up my reds from a very dark shadow. So, hey, happy Thursday. I know tomorrow is casual Friday. Well, casual means I get to wear a t-shirt instead of a Reaper polo. Kiri's like, I'm sleeping. It makes no difference to me whether it is Friday. Let us go to Cam. Boop. Hey, Coos. Hey, everybody. I would say hello, but I'm like going, we have to get into it. Yeah, Collins was on earlier. Collins was attacked by a dentist this morning, so, or so he told me. I can feel this because I've had, several. I had them fix my mouth after years of not going to the dentist. Suffice to say. So this is the pretty color that we're starting with. And this is actually a mixture of, remember, one of my favorite latest reds. If you haven't picked up Asmodeus Red, you should. And it's actually 6 drops of this and 1 drop of black and brown. I started a little bit darker than that. That was just too much black and brown. Walnut and black and brown are great shading colors, but you should use them sparingly because the black pigment count in them is so very strong. Hello, Planner Spoons. Hey, Francis. Hey, Nomad Zeke. Hey, Librowski. Yay! Yeah, Librowski. I know my weekend is mounting up with stuff. I've got 2 busts that I've been so close to finishing for so long. And Crap Steep keeps jumping in the way. And now, of course, Path of Exile has its new league starting on Friday, tomorrow. And David and I are pretty much done with Borderlands, so it looks like we'll be sucked back into Path of Exile. Don't tell Justin. Actually, Justin, I should ask, are you guys playing it?
Oh, I'm going to play it.
Yeah.
I'm excited for it.
Yeah, David's super excited too. He and I started playing Path of Exile. That was the first game we played together. So I've played 2 seasons of it. But we haven't played for a while because we just after 2 in a row we kind of got burned out. So we took a break.
This one's supposed to be really good, by the way.
Oh yeah, I'm trying something different. I love spellcasters, so usually I play Witch, but this time I'm playing a Scion. Tomorrow. I was waiting for you, John. I was waiting for you, Reaper John. I know you love PoE. So yeah, we spent last night online with 2 of David's friends chatting about what our builds are going to be because we play in a 4-stack.
I think John's going to play a brand build, and I'm going to play one of the new melee animation builds, like a 2-hander build. So.
Oh yeah, one of our other friends is going to play a 2-hander. I'm playing an Ice Storm Cyclone build that looks like it's kind of fun. So really my only, my priorities for a build, since I don't know the mechanics behind the game hardly at all, is is it pretty? Does it make pretty spell effects? And is it a female character? Okay, we're good.
What spell do you think you're going to build it around?
Well, it's Ice Storm and Cyclone. So it's based on a staff build. and that has essentially allows you to cast Ice Storm at level 1, and you do a triggered. It's like triggered and channeled, I think. It's interesting. It's an interesting. But actually, the guys all looked at it and went, "Ooh, fancy." So I didn't know. I just picked it because it was pretty. But yes, so we'll see. I don't know the mechanics of the game hardly at all because it's so complicated. Like, I was just getting confident with Witch when I decided to shift it up. All right, so here we go. We got our base coat. And you see how dark I start this red? Ketchup and mustard dragon. This is not ketchup. This is not ketchup at all. Now you're saying I should give him blue eyes so I can complete that color triad, right? Remember color theory, guys? You can use red, yellow, and blue together. You can use any two, but you can also choose to use all of them. So the natural choice for his eye color then, if you're going with that triad, would be blue. But you could also go with something like green. I might not go with something like purple, but I might. It depends on the purple. It depends on how this red turns out. Color theory discussion. Blue slushy. That's American. Blue raspberry slushy with that. We're having burgers tonight, so now I'm starting to think about, like ketchup and mustard. Except I can't have ketchup anymore because tomatoes are evil. All right. Actually, you know what? While we wait for this is almost dry, but while we wait, I'm going to actually base coat his head because I do want to paint it for you probably tomorrow. So I'm just going to base coat the whole thing in the same color because it's so much easier than trying to paint around stuff. But yeah, red used to be, actually red is still one of my favorite colors to paint. Yay, Rocky. These are so cute. Such a nice, such a cute little set of dragons. But I think Rocky needs a girlfriend now. We need to have Penelope, the girl dragon. And you also see another reason that I love Asmodeus Red, by the way, guys, that it covers. So notice this? Notice how well this mix covers? So this is one of the reds that is extremely high coverage, which also helps, right? I'm almost dry. Almost dry. Probably do some wet blend, but we'll see. Probably go straight up to straight Amadeus and then up from there. I may show you guys the crazy way I used to paint red, because I really love really rich reds that are highlighted up toward orange and yellow. I used to do what I call a 9-layer red, which was composed of 9 separate colors that I highlighted up from something like this or even darker to white, actually. All through orange and yellow. So we're almost out of red. At that point, it's time to go and highlight our haunch. Boop. Just going to get a little bit here. I did glue the dragon on, so I kind of have to stick my brush down underneath and try not to get it on the gold stuff. For those of you who watched my little video on my Patreon, this is where you would take a long, thin brush and load up just the tip of it so that you can stick it under there and get those color in those areas without painting the gold again. Yeah. Yep. Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks for catching that. Yep. It is 6 drops of Amadeus and 1 drop of black and brown. Or Asmodeus. I never know which is which. But, and it has 1 drop of water in it, I believe. But it covers really well. And you don't want to use too much black and brown. Maybe I just used it straight. I might have used it straight and not thinned this one. I thinned that one. I don't know. I forget. So there's our little dragon. He's so cute. I didn't put his little arm on, though, so I'm going to have to paint that later. All right, so much like the gold coins, we could paint this whole haunch en masse and then highlight the scales individually. And that is probably the most efficient way to paint the dragon, is to do, and I did this on Swampy Dragon also, but is to highlight each section of the dragon like it's ignore the scales and then go back and highlight the scales. So I'm going to get my next reds all mixed up. So Asmodeus, boop, boop, boop. Here we go. There. And from Paint Him Chunky. Well, he is kind of chunky. I actually will probably, I might not wet blend here. I might use layering just to show you guys. Layering is a little bit harder over that initial pebbled base coat. We'll see. If I get annoyed with layering, I'll switch. And let's see here. From there, we want to go up to clear red, I think. Yeah, I don't know if I would do it 9 layers anymore. It might only take 6 or it might only take 7 because I don't do as many intermediary shades anymore. I just thin it. The question is, do I have some good... Where's my Fireball? There's Fireball. Or Sunrise. Sunrise in clear red. When you're mixing orange highlights, you want to go... oh, come on. You want to go heavier on the orange than on the red because the red is going to overpower your orange so fast. So this is another case like where the Asmodeus came in, where I would do like 6 drops of the Sunrise and only 1 drop of the clear red. Yeah, and get orange all over myself because that appears to be the way I'm rolling today. So when I'm layering with multiple colors, I do tend to mix them all up, or at least most of them, if I know the succession that I'm working on. That way I have them all open at the same time. Then we'll go up to pure this. Boom. All right, let's get some fluid in there, because now we're going to be highlighting. There. All right. All right, Rocky. We got several of your colors mixed up. Now we can apply. And I may just do this, kind of block it in. Oh, you think so? Well, I'm glad, Lebrowski. I do find... Oh, yeah. I do find that it helps if you lay down a base coat first if you're going to wet blend over it with the MSP, just because some of our paints are a little more transparent. So, you know, if you feel like you might not get coverage in that first coat, then you may want to do what I've done and lay down a base coat. And that totally relieves you from worrying about whether your base coat is going to cover. Let's see. That might be a little bit much. We'll find out. We'll find out. Where's my lantern yellow? May as well just go up in big steps then. Ah, lantern yellow, mix up. Lantern yellow likes to like separate super fast, which is funny because a lot of the other yellows don't. It just does that. It's like, that's the way I roll. Just mixing a nice succession. But yeah, I mean, I do not stop highlighting red with clear red. Clear red is the obvious highlight for any other red, by the way, for those of you who do not have clear red. One of them is actually an old bottle of clear red that's all faded. But we've got we got mixes, lots of mixes. So the colors that I'm using today, because I wanted to go with a warmer red that was more brown, it's going to be my clear red and then sunrise orange. So imagine a bottle of clear red with an actual label on it in there. So I'm just mixing up transitions here, and then I go up to lantern. And from here, I would probably go to lantern, maybe pure lantern plus a bit of white, and then a pure white if I was going to go all the way up. I guess that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, maybe 7 or 8 layer red. Hey, Iggy. So that is a thing. Let's see. How do I want to do this? I'm just debating whether I want to layer it or blend it. I guess we'll figure it out. Let's just block him in. But the main mistake that I see people make, we're going to layer it, with red, is that they stop highlighting too soon. Or they don't shade it. They don't do the drama. They don't get the drama with their red that they need. They don't put the highlights and shadows on it to get good depth. Now, as you are painting this is a rounded surface. You will make your first highlight also rounded in shape. So just kind of watch the edge and make sure that it matches that form there. This will help carry the idea that this is a three-dimensional shape. It'll make it look nice and round and chunky. Kind of look at where your light is falling. If you've got a nice strong light at your workstation, that's usually pretty easy. This is straight up Asmodeus red. Remember that the amount of area that you cover with your red is going to differentiate whether this red stays dark or goes light. The more area I cover with lighter reds, the lighter red this dragon will look, even if the shadow is almost black. And that's how you get really cool kind of red velvety effects, is you keep your shadow extremely dark, you bring your highlights up like really rich and lighter, and you can get a really awesome transition dramatic red. I'm putting some of this black and brown mix down here. And I actually am going to kind of use it to line here and to put a dark shadow here. Now, I will be doing some under reflections onto his scales down here at the bottom, but I do need that dark shadow. So I'm using some black and brown to kind of give me a little bit of shadow there. The Asmodeus red is also dark enough to serve, but I wanted just a little extra. These little toes. Yeah, Max Styles. Pretty much black and brown, Asmodeus red, clear red, sunrise orange, and lantern yellow, which are pretty much like clear red, sunrise orange, and lantern yellow are very clear bright-ish. I like my reds to be really saturated when I'm doing them this way. I like really brilliant reds. Really juicy reds. Reds that look fantastic. Gonna bring up this Asmodeus in another layer. Since I thinned my paint, I can actually build up a couple of layers of each red if I want them to be really strong. Alright, and then his little toes. So I'm covering about half the surface with this Asmodeus red, maybe a little bit more. It's about half the surface here, and it's a little more than half the surface here. And I'm going to actually do a bit of the tail also and let you see, maybe I'll highlight it slightly different so you can see what I'm talking about when I'm talking about surface control, where this red could look like a really bright race car red, or it could look like a really dark red. You could even bring it up to something like a dark orange. And it all depends on how much area you let this color take up. All right, so there we go. Let's move on to our next color. Now, this is where I might have to make a mix, because my clear red is so much lighter than my Asmodeus red that I might need to grab a brush full of each and do a half mix, maybe even an extra brush full of clear red. Clear red is heavily pigmented, but the load of other colors in the Asmodeus is going to make it there. That's a little bit better, maybe a little bit more. I want a color that's about halfway. That's good. About halfway between these two. And red is much stronger than yellow pigment, but it does not overpower like green and black and the things that are in Asmodeus. So that's why I had to add more clear red into that, even though clear red is very highly pigmented. Good morning, D. Clearman. Popcorn kernels. Yes, you can imagine popcorn kernels. There are other ways like that I need to touch this up to make it look more convincingly anime-y, but you know, there are ways. It's just hard to do it all. When I told David, I was talking to David about this morning, and he's like, yeah, you know, it looks okay. It's, you know, and I'm like, yeah, because I can't get on and spend the next 2 hours it would take to make this look really good. Because remember what I tell you guys is that the difference between like a decent paint job and a competition level paint job is like the hours of futzing that follow after you lay down your base colors. and your base highlights and shades. Like, if I wanted this NMM Gold to really rock, I would have to spend a lot more time on it. And I don't want to put you guys through the 2 hours of tuning that it would take to make it look even better. You know, it's just like, it's always the futzing. Always the futzing. You block in something and it looks pretty good. But then it's the, you know, you spend double that time going back in and playing with stuff to make it look even better. So now I'm covering with my next highlight, I'm covering about half of the area that my previous highlight covered. And now you can start to see that our shapes are coming out a bit. This leg counts as a cylinder, and this is more of a ball. So think about those shapes that you're painting when you paint them. Don't just throw paint on. Kind of think about the volume that you're trying to create. And I'm using my mixture of Amadeus and clear red. I would say it's about 3 to 1, so 3 clear red to 1 Amadeus or Osmodeus or whatever the heck that name is. I don't know how they pronounce it. The S is sometimes silent. Alrighty. Yeah, well, futzing gets pretty repetitive, and you just kind of get in the zone and you futz till it looks good. Sometimes it doesn't need much futzing because you're just spending so much time setting it up in the beginning anyway, which is kind of the case with my sacrifice bust that I did for Crystal Brush back in the last Crystal Brush. Where everything was so elaborate just straight out the gate with the heavy freehand and the underpainting and the textures that it didn't take much futzing after that because I spent so much time on just setting it up. But, I mean, the bottom line is time, right? We have a little paw, and we have a nice little haunch here that's starting to come up nicely with his colors. Now we have to ask ourselves at this point, at around this point is when I'm starting to ask myself, okay, am I doing a traditional highlight, or am I going to try to make him look really shiny and do almost like an NMM Sky Earth on the leg? It's like, well, we could go that direction, because at this point is where I'm going to start shifting my highlight. If you've got a dull surface, it's going to continue to pick up light mostly at the top where it's flattest. And so for this model, as you can see, the flat part is definitely the top of the leg. But if you are doing an NMM effect on this dragon, then your highlight is going to be, we're going to move the highlight down the leg, because instead of light just falling and, you know, hitting this area and just kind of getting dissipated by a dull surface, a shiny surface will bounce light back toward the eye of the viewer. So light if you're dull, light if you're shiny. And that means that we actually move our highlight from up here up top and we move it down to here, because it's this area right here where the leg is kind of cutting away. Here, let me see if I can get it against my palette. All right, so light, you're a viewer. You're like right up here. Say you're looking down at the dragon, right? So your eye is going to get boing. The light's going to hit here, and right before it drops off here, it's going to bounce at your eye. Because it's not going to bounce here, because that's bouncing up this way, and you're not looking at the dragon from up here. So instead, this area right here is going to be the lightest, and the brightest highlight's probably going to be right around there. Which is also, if you remember, what we did on the coins. So you're always thinking, when you're thinking about shiny, and this is NMM and reflected light, you're always thinking about, you know, think of the model like a mirror, and which angle of the mirror would be bouncing light toward your eye, and that's where your brightest highlight is. So with that in mind, I will start highlighting toward that area. Since I know that this right here is going to be my brightest, I'm going to start bringing up color there. I'm still going to bring up color up on the whole upper surface of the leg too, because this would all still face upward. It's just that the highlight, the brightest highlight, is where the light bounces. So I will lighten the top of the leg, but I won't bring my brightest highlight up on the very top of the leg. Nope, a little bit too much. Let's see here. Oh, Astro Squee. Oh, thanks for the convert. Hey, I'm supposed to remind you guys, Justin noticed that probably a lot of our Twitch Prime people have forgotten to renew their sub. If you are using a Twitch Prime to sub to us here on Reaper, and we do love it, but it does not auto-renew. So you have to go in and kind of check it to make sure that it hasn't fallen off. So, and for those of you who don't know and who do have Amazon Prime accounts, which is most of the civilized world at this point, especially in these days when we have to order a lot of stuff online, you get a free Twitch sub with your Amazon Prime. Like I said, you have to renew it, like manually. It won't auto renew, but it is a free sub to toss to your favorite streamer, hopefully us. And as I always say, a sub for the show is a vote for the show. When we have a lot of subs, it sends a message to the bosses that this is a good thing for us to continue doing and that you like my show. So yeah, if you've got Twitch Prime and you have, or if you've got your Amazon Prime and you have not yet used your Amazon Prime sub, you should do it. So now we're going to bring that up. I'm going to push this back so that you guys can see a little better. There we go. Now you can see the transitions a lot better. Now this is also where I might start. I might bring up a little bit of the red, the lighter red, just the Asmodeus down here next to the coins. Because if I'm going for shiny, then I'm going to get reflected light off of the coins. So I want to remind myself of that and put a little bit of a highlight down there. And that light will change. It'll get more yellowy, orangier probably because of this yellow. So, but I just want to block it in with a little bit of lighter red at this point, to remind myself that I want a reflection down there. Let's see if I can get that to show. There it is. Hold on. Doo-doo-doo. So you can kind of see then you've got dark shadows. You've got a little bit of a highlight down underneath. It's hard to see it right now, but we don't want it to be too over the top. We don't want to bring it too strong because your under reflection should never be more powerful than your actual lighting. Reflected light is just never as strong as your direct light. It's a fun little fancy thing to do. All right, so we'll do that. Excellent. I don't dry brush on these guys because it'll give you a texture. Dry brushing always gives you a texture. And also, these scales are so finely textured. Like, they aren't very deep, right? They're not cut very deep in the model. So I think dry brushing on this model would be fraught with peril. You'd almost inevitably get your highlight color down into the cracks. The way I do TMM Mathophile is I actually start light and work dark. It's far easier, and it makes for a much more dramatic effect. So I would start with if I was doing, say a gold or a silver, say I was doing a silver dragon, I would start with the brightest silver I could, and then I would start adding dark washes and glazes to add the texture, pick out these scales, and do all that. Then, yes, I am going to thin my metallic when I go back in, once I've colored down some of my brighter silver, and put some washes and glazes over it to deepen it. Then I can go back with my regular silver, watered down, and pick out things like scales and bright highlights. But it's, I find it's far easier to start very light and then work darker with washes on a model like this than it would be. I mean, I wouldn't even do it the other way. I think it would look bad. I mean, if you're trying to save time, I mean, then just start with your brightest silver or gold and then put a wash over it. And then put darker washes where the shadows would be. You're done. So I still would advocate the same type of technique, is start with a very bright metallic, work it down with washes and glazes. I think that saves you time as well, and it looks better. Gonna put just a little bit of a highlight here under his scales. Working up now with my Amadeus and clear red mixture on the tail. Maybe I'll pop it a little bit up here too. Now, the nice thing about texture is that it doesn't matter. Blending doesn't matter. My errant brush strokes don't matter because the scales are going to disguise anything that I'm doing. I do think I need to blend in this transition a little bit better. It's a little bit too strong of a line here, mostly because of the way the sculpt is, but I just want it to blend in a little bit better. Yeah, I believe I've done it on like things like armor plating, but I haven't done it on a textured surface like this Dogfather. I was actually going to do it for my Patreon soon because I have a 28mm model with a breastplate that would work great for it. Um, so I may do something for that. For those who do not know, my Patreon is patreon.com/paintingbig. I love it very much. And it is now my main source of financial support, income, since I moved out here to be with David. So I'm really grateful to all of you who have supported me on the Patreon and continue to do so. Working on a PDF and a video right now for you guys. All right, so I think that's pretty good. Now I'm going to get my orange in here. I haven't actually done this before tried to do an NMM red on a textured surface. So this is a first time, guys, just for you. I'm going to try to figure out where my highlight's going to be. Probably going to go down onto that scale. And I'm kind of using it real lightweight at first. I want to see if it looks right, and the easiest way for me to do that is to just kind of lightly block it in. Also remember, the sharper your demarcation line between your highlight and your shadow, the more shiny the dragon will look. Essentially, the more chrome it will look. When people talk about sky earth, they're talking about a sharp delineating horizon line between your highlight and your shadow. And sky earth would be very hard to pull off on a pebbled surface like this. So I'm going for a softer transition. Kind of bringing my oranges up. That means I want a little bit of my red down below. I want my darker shadow to be down here. So now I have my orange. I'm starting to figure out starting to highlight some individual scales. But remember, you don't want to go all orange. The more surface area you cover with orange, the more your dragon will turn into an orange dragon and not a red dragon. So do keep that in mind. Let's see, but I need enough of a highlight. And on cylindrical surfaces that are vertical, your highlight's going to run straight up and down. Gonna hit the tops of his little toes. Keep your orange highlight very small. Just use it as an edging, really. Oh, thanks for the Discord link, Zebo. I mean, it depends, right? It's really at that point the way you paint the eye that's going to get the expression, and also whether you accentuate the mouth. Because the mouth has definitely got a little smile on it because he's happy, he's got treasure. But expression is going to depend on eyes and mouth. Just going to try to get these scales to show up. Well, I mean, if you think about it, the best way to practice metallic, at least NMM or you know, that sort of thing, is on like shin greaves on armor, right? They tend to be very straight up and down surfaces. Thigh plates and chest breastplates are also really good to practice that sort of thing on. So there are plenty of models to kind of work with that on. I'm gonna grab my clear red. Bring that down a little bit again. Make sure that I'm not completely losing my transitions here. Wanna get that orange, have this orange have a little bit of red above and below it so that I can keep my shadow here. And at this point, I think I do want to start bringing up the undersides of things down here. Under reflection is where it's really going to take some work to kind of suggest it. It is getting there. I need to make a darker shadow. I can tell you that. So let me grab some of my blackened brown. Thin it down. If you want control, always thin your paint. Use very little paint on your brush. Yeah, and I mean, with Rocky's, you know, you could go either way. If you accentuate this curve of the brow, he's going to get angry. You know, if you try to round it out a little bit, make the eye a little rounder, he could look very benevolent, especially with the mouth. It's all in what you accentuate. As a painter, you have the freedom to make this expression any way you want. This one even has a little bit of a line here, which could look like a frown. But if you look at it, what it really is it's supposed to be the kind of the smile line, the corner of the mouth pulling up. So if you accentuate the smile and then that muscle, that's when you get a happy Rocky. Work with facial expressions and just kind of play around on these. Actually, these Rocky models are really good ones to play around with that on because of that, because their faces are so neutral. And I would argue that part of painting this model is deciding what mood he's in and then painting toward that end. All right, so I've got a little bit of a highlight coming up off the gold coins at this point, and I need a darker shadow, so I've got my black and brown. I'm going to kind of dab that in to this area and make sure that I do not lose my shadow. I also need a little bit more highlight on this cylinder, I think. It's really hard to do a truly shiny surface on a textured cylinder like this. Like, if this was smooth, it would be so easy to do a really good NMM on it. But because it's textured, it throws a monkey wrench into the whole thing. So when you're practicing this sort of thing, you do want to grab a model that's more friendly and smooth surface. But since I'm me, I decided to make it difficult. Make things difficult. All right, let's grab my slightly lighter. Now when we're getting up past orange, now we're getting to the point where when I start getting toward yellow, my highlights are extremely small. So now I'm going to concentrate just on the edges of things that are throwing light. And the yellow is always a lot. This is a mixture of sunrise orange and lantern yellow. Yellow is a lot stronger than you think it is. I'm always surprised because you always think it doesn't cover, but then when it comes to using it for a highlight, a little bit goes a very long way. Yeah, Cervantes 74. Welcome, for one thing, to the Reaper set. I actually designed the Reaper paint line and created it and mixed every batch of it up until I moved out here 2 months ago. Anyway, there's a starter set, the Reaper Msp Starter Set. I think it's 11 or 12 colors, and that's a good selection to start with. I created it specifically for that, for people who wanted to get in and get a decent selection of colors to play with and decide if they like the line. So, and it's only 11 colors, so it's totally easy on your wallet. Otherwise, if you're just getting into painting, also, like the hobby, but you say you've got GW and Vallejo, so I'm betting you're not new to painting. But the Learn Paint Kits are also an excellent bargain. The split skull with the Reaper John face in the middle. Funny. Yeah, other than that, though, like, I'd recommend maybe picking up some, just your favorite colors, like just looking at the color selection and saying, ooh, well, I really like blue, or I really like purple. Let's look at what colors, what purples there are, what reds there are. I know, right now I'm using some of the Pathfinder line. We do Pathfinder's paint line, and I love this Asmodeus red. I love it. It's got great coverage. It's a beautiful dark red. So I recommend that one for sure. If you're looking for oranges and yellows, the Bones line from Reaper, the Bones paint line is excellent. So like MSP Bones. These are made for higher coverage. So Sunrise Orange and Lantern Yellow actually have decent coverage. So they're great calls too. There are so many colors though. So many colors that are excellent. Alrighty, so we've got a little dragon leg here, and it's not looking bad. I think I need a little more clear red on those toes though, got a little bit too strong between the brown and the orange, and I lost some of my mid-tone there. That's a common mistake I see also people doing is when they're highlighting and shading is they lose their mid-tone. They would do a lot of shadows, they do a lot of highlights, and their mid-tone just like disappears, and then they wonder why it looks weird. So always make sure that whatever your mid-tone color is, in here it would be a middle red. Don't make sure it doesn't disappear. Make sure that some of it is still there. Alright, so I need to put a little bit more orange on. Thank you for the painting big dragon, Reaper John. Let's see. Grabbing a little bit more of my orange yellow to hit highlights here. Try to pop it up just a little more. Hitting just the edges of the scales around where I think my highlight needs to be. I don't want it really strong. I don't want the yellow to be more... I don't want it to be an entire scale. I want it just to bring out the details. I tend to, everybody's got a different highlighting style is one thing I want to talk about. So with me, I like to bring my highlights up very small and very sharp. And that's a different style, right? There are people out there, Jennifer comes to mind, my friend Jennifer Haley. Her work is very, at least when she and I were both getting into it, she had a lot of very broad highlights. It definitely defined her work back then. And so not just the color, but the size of your highlights as opposed to your shadows can really affect your painting style and the way your models look. So maybe mess around with doing big, broad highlights and then mess around with making really small, tight highlights and see what it makes your models look like. Somebody who does small, tight highlights would be Ian Marcon, for example, who paints for Reaper. And many of you may have seen his models at various ReaperCon competitions. Ian does small, sharp edge highlights a lot of the time, and it makes his work look very tight and a little bit cartoony, but very anime almost. So how you highlight and how broad your highlights are and how light you take them affects very much the style of the model that you end up projecting. So experiment. Like, look at how you highlight right now and ask yourself, hey, if I switch this up, how would it look, right? There we go. So now we got a really nice red going on right now. That's a really luscious red. It's a very candy red. I love it. Very happy. Have little touches of orange on these most upper scales, but now we're going to go up to white. Hey, Zambies, how's it going? Yeah, we have NMM triads. We have a lot of colors. Actually, if you look at what I did with the gold coins yesterday, I was using a lot of other different colors for NMM. So yeah, definitely. I mean, you can use almost any yellow. I was using a bunch of different yellows and browns yesterday. But we do have an NMM triad. So like NMM gold shadow, NMM gold highlight. And that's 93, 01, 02, and 03. And that's a good place to start if you're just looking for colors. I often will also put a little bit of extra yellow in those if you want a really rich gold. I like to add a drop of lantern yellow to each of those. And then the other thing with NMM, if you're looking for a shiny effect, which actually I'm going for on this dragon, so now we're going to go and reach for our white. When you go for NMM, remember your shadows must be dark and your highlights must be up to pure white or very close to it. For true shininess. It is the dark and light together that creates the illusion of shiny. Because that's what you're doing. You're creating a visual illusion that a dull area is actually shiny. And if you look at a lot of the Dutch late Renaissance painters were doing a lot of NMM, but you'll find that they use very sharp spot highlights to convey that when they did a metallic goblet or something in a piece. I need some actual yellow, actually. I skipped over my lantern yellow. Maybe I'll use candlelight. Candlelight and lantern. Got our dragon leg going on there. Sure, no problem. I try to keep an eye on questions, Cervantes. I like to encourage people to ask questions during the stream. It does go off topic sometimes, but it allows it allows each stream to be more educational, I think, because that way maybe I'm painting red today, but if somebody asks a question about something else and may say that somebody's kind of watching the stream and they're not that into red, maybe I'll answer a different question that will be helpful to them. So I don't mind going a little off topic here and there. Thanks for the link to my Patreon planer. Yes, I do work for Reaper, but only a few streams, and so I am mainly a freelance painter, and my Patreon is the bulk of my income. So yes, thank you for the link, planer. Planer's so awesome about promoting me. I have a couple of free things up there too, and actually I'm thinking about doing a new free thing for my Patreon on thinning your paint. Kind of a basic toolbox kind of thing. There we go. So now I'm really hitting. Let me get up here. We're gonna get close. Let's get close. Close. There we go. Nice and close. I'm all about the education. All right. So now we're doing little tiny yellow highlights. Oh my gosh. And really, I am just touching them on there. I just want a little bit of additional intensity around this area. I need to watch the shapes of my scales and make sure that I'm emphasizing them. But I also need to make sure, yeah, that's actually pretty cool. I need to touch this up maybe a little bit. This scale needs to be a little lighter. There, and a little bit. It had a little bit too much dark red on it to be in the position that it was. So futzing. Now I am futzing. Essentially, when you're dealing with this, you have to kind of futz and say, okay, how is it looking good? How is it not looking good? Like, it looks pretty good over here, but it's not as good here. And I think it's because I've got a lot of dark stuff still up here. So I need to, like, bring those up just a tad. That's a lot better. So a little bit of orange highlight on some of these upper scales. Just a little. You want it to be red still, remember. You want it to look red. For it to look red, we have to make sure that most of it is red. So at this point, I'm actually going to tackle this, which doesn't look right to me, this big dark space. It's vertical, but I think it needs a little bit of reflected light or something. This is where I'll just make the call and say there's going to be reflected light up here so that I can color that area in, because before it was a bit of a dark blob. All right, so we've got our dark shadow, we've got our highlights. I haven't brought it up to pure white yet, but I'm gonna get there. Just kind of touching up now. I'm kind of adjusting, saying, okay, it's getting there. Now I'm looking down here at these coins, and they would be reflecting up yellow. They would be reflecting up a slightly different yellow, so I may whip out my ogre skin from yesterday, which is what I used for my basis for my NMM, and mix a little bit of that right next to my lantern yellow. They're not far off from each other. The ogre skin has some yellow ochre in it, so it's a little bit different. So we've got two things reflecting onto each other, don't we? We've got the gold reflecting onto the dragon, and the dragon reflecting onto the gold. So this is the fun part, right? Well, thank you, Francis. Yeah, the key is to keep your highlights really, really small, Max Styles. Just keep, when you go to orange, make sure that the majority of the surface is still red, and you'll get that red that you want, that candy apple red. I'm going to grab some of this ochre, and I'm going to see, I may have thinned it too much, but I'm going to see if I can paint it on to these lowest scales and get some ochre-y highlights coming right off the gold. And it's kind of thin. I mean, I'm glazing more than anything. I'm just trying to suggest some of this gold color is coming up. I could underpaint this if I felt I wanted it stronger. I could actually go for a bit of white first. But you don't want to get too strong. And once you put this white on, you're going to cover over it with the ochre. I just want little touches. Just want a suggestion. Because you don't want to wipe out your red either, right? So essentially what I've done is see how I've gotten just a dab of white on all of these scales down here that are close to the gold. And so that then I can glaze that yellow, that ogre skin, gold color, over the top of that white. I could just do a mix too if I wanted to. I could just do a mixture of the ogre skin and white. There. Let me see. I'm gonna glaze. I'm gonna grab. I maybe weakened this a little much. I threw a ton of water into it. I probably needed a little stronger. Yeah, this is when I talk about surface control, when I use that term, that's just my term for how much of your surface stays a particular color in order to produce an effect. So with red, surface control is so important because the minute you get too orange with it, or you don't go red enough with it, is when you don't get the color, you don't get it to look the right color. So now I'm painting that ogre skin over the bottom of that leg to make it look like it's reflecting gold. I could also take a little bit of my lantern yellow and even suggest a little bit more. So now it looks like maybe he's picking up some highlights down there. Might want to glaze it because it wouldn't be totally, it would get a little light across the whole area. So I glazed it with yellow there. Remember, when you glaze, go back, grab it, grab your brush, wring it out, and come back and pick out, get all that pooling color out of there. Don't leave it pool. Or it will dry funky. So now that looks like maybe it's picking up some highlight from the gold, and then the turnabout is to grab some clear red, maybe even my mixture of Amadeus and clear. Thin it way, 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 way colored water down. Colored water, you want to hardly see it. Because red is powerful, and if you knock out your NMM gold, you're going to have to repaint it. And then put a little bit of that over the gold closest to the dragon. Just a tiny bit. Make it look a little orange down there. I need a little stronger red. I think I need to go clear. Clear red to the rescue! So we're starting to see a little bit of red. Yeah, it looks wrong, Francis. It's not like bad, but it, and I've discussed this with other painters who disagree with me, but for me, when you mix, when you're painting something metallics, you're essentially choosing to depict the surface with realism, right? You're painting a metallic surface metallic, which means that if you also try to NMM on the same model, it's not going to read right? Because the eye is already going, well, this is metal, so then what's this thing? So it's going to look like maybe like a colored ceramic or something next to the NMM, which is not bad, but if you're not looking for that effect, then yeah, it's not quite right. So keep that in mind. All right, so I have some red reflection on the gold. I have some gold reflection on the red. Two great things that look awesome together or something. So yeah, so now I've got a little bit of under reflection going on, and that's cool. I like that. So now I need to bring this up to white. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's one way to think of it, Mathophile. I don't ever think of that when I'm painting. When I make that choice between NMM and TMM, it's entirely the quality of the surface. Like, what are the qualities of the surface? Is it fine detail? Is it big and broad? You know, does it have a lot of texture? Does it have a lot of filigree? That's my entire thought process. I don't care about viewing angle. I know I can control it, so it doesn't matter to me. Viewing angle, like I said, viewing angle is obvious with most figures. So all you have to do as the painter is look at those viewing angles and make sure your NMM looks correct from them, and you're fine. Doesn't matter what model it is. All right, a little bit of white. And I kind of, I mean, A lot of people say that NMM is only good from one angle, but I really, as I said, I really feel like that's not quite the whole story. It is one way to think about it, however, and if it is a useful way for you, then rock it. Or Rocky. Alright, actually, no, I think I missed out. I think I need another highlight up here. So now I'm going to add little touches of white. I'm going to make them even smaller than my yellow. More spot highlights than anything at this point. And when you're dealing with a textured surface, you want to really make sure that, like, on either side of the texture, you've got some of that light. And then I'm going to go tune it, because the first time out the gate, it won't be right. But yeah, I mean, whenever you're doing NMM or TNMM on a flat surface, you've got so much control because somebody's going to be looking directly at your flat surface. They're not going to look at your flat surface by turning it this way. They're only going to look at it this way. They're going to look at this surface when they're over here. So you want this to look still somewhat correct when it's viewed from the back. And that's something you do in touch-ups when you're painting this whole area. But it usually isn't difficult, in my experience. This scale needs more. This scale needs more. I think I need a little bit more up here. I'm getting a little bit dry on my brush. Now, yeah, just straight up white. And I'm going to have to touch up some of these undersides of these scales. I'm going to have to go yellow with them, and orange and white, because they're not transmitting the light correctly. Ah, that was too much. Blorf. You always want to adjust the amount of paint on your brush, folks. But it's easy to touch up. Yeah, I mean, NMM technique for emulating color shifting is probably the hardest to pull off, because color shift is really shifts incrementally. I mean, we used to call it NII, as not iridescent. But I mean, the biggest thing, Methophile, you can suggest that pretty easily. You just have to kind of look at an iridescent thing that you find a photo reference, because it's going to flatten out the iridescence, and then you can kind of map out the rules for it. But it's pretty, I mean, I got a pseudo iridescence on my Eldar because I highlighted the underside with a different color. You can make something look iridescent by doing a different color for your under reflection, like changing the color of light, essentially, because you would get a different light with color shift. But it's a lot more complex than that. I mean, I can't really... This is something I cannot answer in a single sentence. And it's so titchy to do it. I mean, best on sci-fi models with bodysuits and stuff like that, obviously. Subject matter makes a big difference there. Was just looking at somebody who had done a green to purple iridescent the other day, and that's pretty much what they did, is they did a greenish highlight and a purple under reflection. And that's the easiest way to kind of get that suggestion of that sort of thing. But whether that's quite proper, I don't know that you would call it that. So the big thing here now is that, just like up here, I don't want to just do one row of scales with highlights, right? If I'm doing the leg, I want to make sure that if there's a highlight on one scale, there's a highlight facing it on its next scale. That diffuses the pattern a bit and makes it look more correct. I'm also going to want to glaze with some orange here, probably, to bring it up. This leg, I feel, got a little bit dark. It's not as directly pointed toward the light, so I can be forgiven for that, but I should correct it. So I'm going to put a glaze of clear red over it first. That makes everything brighter. See how bright that made it. And I didn't lose, because it's a glaze, I didn't lose my underlying highlights. They're still there, so I can still work from them. Shiny dragon. He's so shiny. Alrighty. Yeah, the brain, yeah, exactly what Mathophile said. The brain, if you read that Betty Edwards book, Color, that I recommend all the time, she talks about how color is relative and how everything changes, and the same gray will look dark or light depending on what you put it next to. Um, and it's the same thing with, like, when you're looking at an egg under red light, you're going to see the egg as white, even though the egg can't be white. So there is expectations and perceptions, and the brain will definitely, just as Mathophile says, do processing. Um, and you can't always, it's not always reliable processing. It's like trying to interpret what it sees, right? Reliable. Well, I guess reliable is a bad word, but always keep in mind that color is relative, contrast is relative. Your brain is trying to make sense of what it sees. Yeah, these scales are a little more difficult. Yeah, which can inform you with mini painting. I mean, more than anything, it's just like, don't overthink it. Understand that it exists, but then also understand that sometimes you have to fudge things. It's a miniature. Especially because you're painting at a totally different scale, which forces you to paint in a different manner. That's why I like to paint bigger models, is because it doesn't force me into a particular box of highlighting and shading. I have more freedom. Because you definitely have to, like, make brighter highlights and darker shadows if you're going to get good results on 28 mil. But with something larger, you have a lot more freedom. All right, I went a little bit too yellow on that. So once again, we're reaching for our clear red glaze. Clear red glaze is a good thing to have mixed up when you're playing with this stuff. I got too yellow on a lot of those scales. Part of it is that they're small scales, but I still don't want it quite that red or quite that yellow. So I'll put a glaze over it, knock it down. Yeah, well, then you have to think about more like viewing angles, right, Mathophile? You don't have a consistently controlled viewing angle like you do with the 2D. Which means that some effects are definitely much harder to get to make work on a 2D. And often you are just fudging it to get the correct effect. A lot of what we do is illusion. And the better you understand how contrast can play into your hands as a miniature painter, that whole thing about, the same gray looks light or dark depending on what you put it next to. The more you play with that stuff, I think the higher level you can get in this hobby. You don't have to think of that to enjoy it, of course. It's just when you're playing with light, when you're trying to get a specific effect or draw the eye. These are pretty advanced concepts, but there's no reason that a beginner can't think about those concepts. And if you're coming from a background like Mathophile, who is, regularly dealing with those concepts in a different medium, then, you kind of have a leg up, because then it's a matter of, how do I adapt this? And understanding the limitations and the ways you can cheat and push the new medium that you find yourself in. And that's the same with any artist who tries a new medium. It's like moving from painting to sculpture, which so many of our sculptors have done. And the best of the miniature sculptors are people who also paint. So they do both. They've moved from one medium to the other, or back, from sculpting to painting, painting to sculpting, and it informs their process. There we go. Now we got tiny little sparkles. Tiny sparkles. And then we have a leg. Yay, a leg. And I even made a spotlight on his little toes. See how I brought those up to the edges. And that's purely stylistic. That's just the way I want to run. So. And I could do some under reflections here. Obviously, I haven't done the under the leg reflections. Thank you, Gurgi. Oh, converted from Prime to Tier 1. And that is even, better because... Oh, and gifting subs. Thanks, Gurgi. Wow, you put us closer to our next AMA and giveaway. Thank you. That's fantastic. Justin was just saying how we needed to encourage more subs, and you have just made us happy today, Gurgi. Thank you so much.
Yes, Gurgi, that's awesome. Thank you. In fact, that's a That's a newer name. I like to see new names in chat, and to see new names gifting subs is impressive.
Yeah, it's
So
super.
awesome. Thank you, Gert.
Mathophile, I haven't tried a full sculpt yet. I'm getting close. I really actually want to. I've got this idea in the back of my head for a bust. And every time I get a new bust, I'm just like, I should really try this. I should really do this. I've done some sculpting in like ceramics classes, you know, in art school, but not ever for miniatures. And I was always better at 2D art than at 3D, but then I never really, you know, I say that, but then I have to admit I never really applied myself at 3D the way I have at 2D. So I want to try it. I think it's natural when you're in miniatures, if you're, you know, if you're a good painter or you're a good sculptor, to want to try the other medium. Because it does inform your process, right? And especially when you get to be a good painter and you're like looking for a specific bust. Like I was just thinking about the altar of Dagon that I've been painting for you guys and thinking this would make a great backdrop for an Innsmouth bust, you know? But there's like, I found one deep one bust on the internet and I didn't really like it. So I'm like, well, maybe this is yet another thing of it gets to the point where you're just like, maybe I should just sculpt one, you know? It's the horrible, we get this all the time when we're in the arts and crafts in general, right? I think people who can sew like always fall into this trap of well, yes, but I could pay the $40 or I could just sew one for myself, right? So I think this is the natural progression of that particular mania, crafting mania, where you can make it yourself, so you don't want to buy it anymore, or nobody makes exactly what you want, so you just decide to make it yourself. It's totally that. Oh, and there you go. Reaper John says, go to zbrushcore.com/mini/index and all sorts of tutorials. That's very cool. Very cool. Thanks, Reaper John. Reaper John, for those who do not know, has been working on his ZBrush skills also. So, not an easy program to embrace. I keep hoping they'll make the learning core a little bit easier by the time I get there. But I'll check that out, John. Thanks. Here, actually, let me make a note of it. ZBrushcore.com. Let's all write it down, guys, for later. Or screenshot it. Or ZBrushcore.com/mini/index.php. Thank you, John. So all of us who want to get our feet wet sculpting with ZBrush now have somewhere to go to play with it. And playing is fun. Oh, I believe it, Bill Robertson. Yay. Oop. Oh, yeah, it's opportunity cost, Mathophile. Absolutely. Totally opportunity cost. Yep. For me, it's just a matter, for me, it's very much this model is not made by anybody. Like, you know, like I want to paint an X, I want a bust that's an X, and I, you know, and it's not made by anybody. So that means that I have to make it, or I have to think about it, or I can sit and complain. But thank you, everybody. And thanks, John. But yeah, there's always the cost of, I'm going to spend my time doing this. And that's what's kept me from sculpting so far, to be perfectly honest, because I know how much time it will take. I know how much time it took me to get to be a good miniature painter. And I know that to get to the sculptor level that I would want to be at, it will take me at least that investment of time. And so I constantly have to measure that with, especially now that I'm freelancing, I have to measure it against making a living, right? Then sculpting becomes, since I'm not going to make a living at it, at least, you know, not anytime soon, not unless I really commit to it, then I have to measure that against doing all the things that I do that contribute to making a living. So up here, I'm just putting in a little bit of a highlight here with my clear red up against the top of these scales. So there we have a red-haunched Rocky. And you can see how the orange, like, it changes the color. If I wanted this all to go more red, then I would take my clear red and I would put a glaze over the whole area. I might need to reapply a little bit of my darkest shadow. I might need to reapply my lightest highlights, but it would shift the entire area closer to red. As it is, as you know, as you can see, it's a very complex red right now. Well, and part of it is, I mean, I guess I lost a little bit down here. Kind of troubleshoot and say, well, I've got this under into the area. So if I want this area to look, you know, like my mixture of Asmodeus. But yeah, there's a lot of refining I could put into this to make it look even better, but this is where we're at right now. Yeah, that's nice.
Ann.
Huh?
We might have some bitrate problems. Hold on a second.
Oh, okay. Well, we're close to ending anyway, so.
Oh, we balanced out. There we go. It looks like it solidified. Yeah, it looked like we got some internet. It looks like maybe your internet dipped for a second.
Well, Mathophile, you may not know how much you'll enjoy it in the long run, but with sculpting, it's perfectly possible to at least get your feet wet by doing conversions. So converting a model and doing a bit of sculpting to help that conversion along, you can really assess whether you're enjoying the process or not. And I think that gives you a really good idea. So I would highly recommend that, you know, first you invest in complicated conversions, see if you really enjoy that, and, you know, maybe muck around, try to sculpt a face. But the problem with trying to judge enjoyment when you're at the beginning of the process is that, you know, you're probably struggling. You aren't very good at it off the bat, and that may kill your enjoyment unless you really concentrate on enjoying the actual learning process. It's all mindset. Everything is mindset. It's all how you look at it. All right. QL. Yeah, see, exactly. Pancake Elemental sounds fantastic. Hey, Inara. Purple Heart back at you. All right, guys. I think that's pretty good tutorial on how to do a shiny red dragon. I think Rocky's pretty awesome, actually. I think it's fun. This was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Tomorrow maybe we'll do facial expression. We'll do the eye. That sounds like fun. It's always fun to paint the face, right? Dragons, the most fun is doing the face. Then it's just endless scales. Do we have a raid?
I am looking currently. Let's see.
Let's get closer so you guys can see them. I can put a little bit more highlights on those leg scales.
As far as our regulars go, the only one online currently is Sky Daddy. But let's see here.
Anybody else interesting in art?
Actually, it looks like we have a sculptor here. I think we've rated her before. We could rate her. Yeah, so it looks like she's doing. It looks like something from Dark Crystal. No, I'm sorry, it's Yennefer from The Witcher.
Oh, cool.
That's really cool. Let's raid her.
Yeah, let's do that. Super. Okay, guys. Well, as always, we love to raid people who are traditional artists in other mediums, and ZBrush artists. So let's have some fun. And I hope you guys had fun today, and I hope you enjoyed your red rocky haunch. I did. And now it's time to get on with the rest of the day, and we will see you tomorrow. We'll do Rocky Face. We'll do the happy Rocky Face or the angry Rocky Face. Maybe we'll do both and show you how to tweak it. And Rocky will be horribly confused because he'll be angry on one side and happy on the other. Alrighty, guys. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you very much, guys.
Bye.
And we'll see you this afternoon for painting Platinum and then Reaper Live. So keep being awesome. Spread the Reaper love, and have a great day. If we don't. Thanks, guys.